This will not be hard to do, but we're going to say some nice things about Paul Dye. Mr. Dye, if you come up here in the front. Mr. Bleecker.
I've known Paul Dye, Mr. Dye, for a long time. And the first thing I want to mention about him is that he is a champion of service. He is a man that when you call him and you need something, the first 3 words out of his mouth are, whatever you need. And the next thing is, where you want me and what time should I be there? He never asks for any money, he never asks for anything, he just comes to be of service. And that's been going on for a long, long time, and he's being certainly to be commended for that. I believe, I want to talk a little bit about his martial art. I believe that when somebody goes to 10th, they should be a standalone 10th. And what I mean by that is that when you think of a 10th by name, there's a certain something about them that they stand alone. There's something that they've truly excelled in above the others, or at least to a level where they stand out. Paul Dye, I believe that we have a spirit of Kenpo. I think that it's now worldwide, and I think it takes every single Kenpoist to have a piece of that spirit. You all have some. Everybody from the 10th degree to Tyson. Where's Tyson? He's around here somewhere. To the children. I knew you were. And we all have a piece of that. And it takes all of us universally to make up the full spirit of Kenpo. I talked about that at the Legacy. We can't do this alone. You know, one monkey is no monkey. You know, one chimpanzee is no chimpanzee. You can't do Kenpo by yourself. We need each other. And so, with Mr. Dye, he understands that spirit. And if you've ever watched his Friday Night Line, if you've ever seen him run it, be in it, or been in his garage, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Because the spirit of Kenpo is connected to us emotionally. And this man has tremendous emotion for Kenpo. And if anybody's ever worked with him, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Bruce Lee and Dan and Asano had a lesson one time. And Bruce was teaching Dan how to punch better. And Dan was down in a stance, and Bruce was in front of him, and he'd say, punch, and he'd punch. And he'd say, punch, and he'd punch. And he'd say, harder, and he'd punch. And Bruce kind of shook his head for a second, and he walked over to Dan and Asano, he slapped him in the face, and said, punch! And Danny was so, and he fired it out there. And Bruce stood back, he said, ah, now you get it. Now you're punching. He had captured Danny's emotional what Bruce referred to as the emotional content. That he said, express yourself. That is Mr. Dye. When you watch him move and you watch him express himself, it's pure emotion, it's pure spirit. And I don't think there's anybody in Kenpo that I know who has a stronger connection than Mr. Dye does. I'm going to give you 2 examples. I hope you remember this. When I interviewed Paul for the international journey, I came to his house. We sat in the living room, you remember? And as I interviewed him, there were times when he stopped. He couldn't go on. He's choked up. Tears in his eyes. That's emotion. And Patty would lean over and say, it's okay, Paul. It's okay. That's emotion that he has. That's his emotional content that he has. That's his standalone. The other example that he has that I remember is he taught a seminar one time. And he walked in and he said, all you guys, and there were plenty there. It's its old house. It's full house. He said, take your belts off and sit down. I'm going to talk to you tonight about Ed Parker, our founder. I'm going to talk to you about our founder. Sit down, I'm going to talk to you about it. He spent the whole seminar, remember that? Spent the whole seminar talking about our founder. And what was he trying to do? He was trying to give them that emotional connection to our founder that he experiences. You know, every first generation black belt knows what that is. I had a fellow at the Legacy Awards last year walked up to me and said, you know, the new people today, they don't talk about Ed Parker. Everything seems like they don't care about him. They know who he is, they know his name, but they don't care about it, they don't mention him. And I said the reason why that is because they didn't know him. They don't have, first generation black belts who knew him have an emotional connection to him. If you're in Bob White's students here, your Ed Parker is Bob White, Mr. White. When we were coming up, Chuck will remember this, we didn't talk a whole lot about Professor Chow and James Matosi. We talked about Ed Parker, Mr. Parker. That was our emotional link, our connection. And that's what Mr. Dye was trying to connect with those people, to give them that emotional content, that expression of the spirit that we have, which is the deepest depth of our martial arts. And I don't think there's anybody in Kenpo that I know, aside from Mr. Parker, who has a stronger connection to that spirit and that emotional content that Bruce Lee talked about than Mr. Dye. And I'm proud that he is here today to go to 10. I'm proud and grateful that you're my friend.